G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and today we're going to be taking a look at drawing chibi characters. Chibi is a bit of a slang Japanese term referring to short people or small children. I'm believing that that is true because that's what it says on Wikipedia, but I am stating it as a fact. So, getting into it, this is just a simple example that I've set up. Chibi characters generally have these proportions where the head is very much larger than the body, and the body is usually a bit thicker too to balance things out. So I've got a little bit of a size comparison thing here for you to have a look at. Now, just before I get into it, I will just let you know from the onset that the program I'm using is called Mischief. You can check it out at madewithmischief.com, and it's especially cool because it's an infinite canvas, so I can scroll to any part of this whole thing and it goes on forever, and I can also zoom in and zoom out infinitely. So feel free to check that out in your own time. I just thought I'd let you know from the beginning. So here I have a bit of a chart showing some various proportions of some silhouettes, and on the left here we have a bit of a human-ish proportioned character, so something that might be in a comic or you know, an anime manga, something like that. And then moving along, we have here a slightly larger head and a shorter body, so that on the left where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different head heights on the character. So this head size here stacked on itself 7 times is the height of this person. In this example, it's 4, and then we go down to 3, and then down to 2. Now, you can't really go past 2, can you? Because then it would just be a floating head. But as you can see, it gets more and more sort of childish and cartoony looking. Now, the key with chibi characters is they've got to be cute as hell. That's the whole point of them. That's why they're so popular and so fun to draw, so fun to look at. So, going into this example here of this chibi character, we're just going to take a look at some simple steps on how to achieve the proportion, and there are many different proportions that you can use. So we're just going to take a look at a few things, but first and foremost we're just going to kind of have a bit of muck around. So we start off with a circle for the head, and then I kind of add a little bit underneath for the jawline, like this. Okay, it's quite sketchy, don't mind that. And then I add a line for direction, and then the eye line is generally quite low. Okay, so in a normally proportioned head, we have something a little closer to, let me just go across here. So there's an example. We've got something more like this. This is a normally proportioned construction for a head, for a comic size head, right? And this is how it might sort of turn out proportion-wise with the eyes and the mouth, ear. You get the idea, okay? So Chibi's a little bit different. We come across here, and the eye line on the regular proportioned head is halfway down the face, right here. Whereas on a Chibi, we have a very large forehead and a very small jaw. Okay, so the eye line is quite low, and then we have very big eyes. Okay, so we've got the top and bottom of the eyelids. We're going to go with a bit more of a Japanese style here, and then we draw very large eyes. So the bigger the eyes, the bigger the sparkly bits in the middle to kind of bring out that cartoony, cute look, the better. Okay, so I'm going to go across here. I feel like the jaw's a bit too big, so I'm actually going to bring it in like that. There we go. So then we have a tiny little nose, and then we add a bit of a mouth. Okay, so we don't want our nose or mouth to be too big. It kind of can remove from the cute feeling of the picture. Same with the ears. You don't want it to be too big. And then we have the hair, and the hair is usually a bit big too, so kind of got our, kind of takes up a larger portion of the head and the high eyebrows for the open head. Okay, so then we next go into the body. So the body kind of branches out, and the limbs can take various forms. They can kind of taper out or taper in. For this example, we're going to have the arms kind of get bigger until it gets to the hands. Okay, so they come out and get a bit larger like this. That's probably a bit too big. Now I don't draw in this style very much. I'm just kind of sharing whatever little knowledge I've kind of collected over the years, and just looking up some references recently to refresh my observations. And then with the feet, I'm going to taper them in to the feet, so getting thinner until we get to the toes. So there are different ways of doing the limbs, and we're going to go into that in a moment, but this is just one simple way of doing a chibi character. Now, as you can see, his proportions are fairly broad and long and large compared to many chibi characters, because you can actually get a lot smaller than this, which tends to look a lot cuter. So we're going to muck around with a few styles. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to start off with a circle. So we go as clean as we can for the circle, and I'm just going to add a little bit of a jaw, really not much, just kind of flatten out the bottom, okay, add a direction line and add an eye line, okay. So we've got the very basics of the character's skull, the construction lines for the skull. So there are different ways you can draw the mouth and the eyes and the nose, the features of the chibi character. Now I showed you the big eye one. You can also do little eyes like this, kind of like little button eyes. Add a little highlight in there, little eyebrows, and you can add your mouth and keep things quite simple. So something good about chibi is that you don't really need to be an amazing artist to make something that looks decent. So as long as you know how to proportion things fairly well, you can turn something decent out of your sketches. Okay, so let's turn this into a pretty little girl, add some eyelashes, and let's get some hair going on. So I'm just gonna add big ponytails. Okay, remember to leave quite a large space for the top half of the head, and then less space for the jaw. Okay, so we've got our basic proportions, and as you can see, as I've kind of demonstrated, we can mess around with features of the face. You can create sort of your own style. There isn't kind of a rule as to how to draw chibi styles. There are lots of different ways of going about it. Some are more popular than others, so obviously you can kind of look up and find ones that people like to use or that are popular, and you can kind of learn from those. We can kind of develop your own style based on messing with proportions and creating that childlike, cartoony, very cutesy sort of style. So some other ways of going about drawing bodies, rather than having kind of a thicker, larger core and then thinning out to the limbs like this, we can do the opposite. Right? We can start off with a very thin core like this, and then thicken out to the legs like that. So have the limbs get bigger as they branch out. Yeah, so that's kind of Powerpuff Girls like. If you kind of watch Powerpuff Girls, you can see how their arms and legs kind of are bubbly and get bigger. And you don't necessarily need to draw the feet or the fingers with chibi styles, which is quite cool, because in the end, like I said, you can draw something quite simple. And I should probably add a dress to this, shouldn't I? Since it's this cutesy little girl. There we go. Okay, so there's another example, and as you can see, this chibi style is quite different to this chibi style, right? So they wouldn't necessarily go in the same cartoon together or something like that, but we can really muck around and get different, styles happening. We can have ones where we don't necessarily draw an extra area for the jaw. We can just work with a circle, add a direction line, add an eye line. I want to keep the eye line quite low, and have lots of hair. Have a cute little mouth. So this is another different way of doing the eyes. It's not necessarily the first or the second way that I did. And as you can see, with really minimal line work, we can get quite a simple but effective chibi face happening. Okay, so again, we always begin with the construction lines. We always want to set up our proportions first. We've got our head done, and in general it would be wiser to work with the construction lines of the skull and body before going into doing refining features like the eyes and mouth and things like that, which I might do in a moment just to illustrate what I mean. But you get the basic idea. We can also go for a bit more of a straight look rather than tapering out or in. We can kind of just have it fairly consistent, like this, where the hands and arms don't get necessarily bigger or smaller. So we can give him a little shirt, give him mitten hands. Now I will admit that anyone who's seen my Larry series, he's quite based off of a chibi sort of style. This character called Larry, who has proportions that are quite chibi-like. So there you go, that's another little example. It's good to generally kind of tuck in around the eye area before we go out. It kind of makes the cheeks pop out and look a bit cuter. In terms of that as well, you can also add features that make something look cuter, like little blush marks under the eyes, right, like that. Oops, you kind of want it to go in the same direction, like that. Yeah, and I think I'm quite happy with that. Cool. And then what I was talking about before in terms of working with the construction lines of the head and the body before doing the details, in general it would be wiser to do that. So for example, I draw my circle, and let's draw a badass chibi guy, bit of a cutesy sort of bad boy, just for fun. Okay, so we've got this guy, he's got that's his eye line and head proportions. And before going into the detail, we're going to muck around with the body and the proportions. So he's going to have a bit of a hunched body like this. His shoulders are going to be tucked up because his hands are going to be in his pocket. He's going to be a bit slouched. Give him skinny jeans, tiny little feet. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's as simple as getting the basic proportions in first. He's got his slouchy little pose. I'm going to give him maybe a cigarette. Give him those big gloomy eyes. And then we can add the details. Hooray! So colouring in the eyes. Doing the eyes is quite simple. There are lots of ways of doing it, but the way I find most effective is to draw the circle for the eye area like this. Then we draw a highlight or perhaps two highlights, and then I tend to, rather than just drawing a pupil, I begin the pupil being connected with a shadow area up here and colouring it in like that. And that's how I draw my eyes. And then we have, of course, the surrounding area, which could either be like that, or it could be a full eye. Or, you know, there are lots of ways of doing it. It's kind of consistent often with anime or manga techniques. Notice I'm saying manga, not manga, because I got ripped a new butthole from that tutorial I did that was Western versus anime sort of style comparisons. In fact, that video, while it got a lot of views, a lot of people were upset by my lack of knowledge, which I prefaced at the very beginning of that tutorial that I have a lack of knowledge. I was just kind of sharing my observations from a Western perspective, so go figure, can't please everyone. And let's give this guy sort of a bad boy haircut. Okay, quite enjoying doing this. It's good fun. It's good quick payoff to create a fun, cute little drawing from really simple proportions. And as you can see, really minimal construction work in creating this picture here, and the payoff is quite good. And let's give him a bit of a leather belt. And I'll draw a skull on his shirt. Alright, so I'm quite happy with how that turned out. Bit of a cute little chibi character. So in sort of a recap, as you can see, there's a simple example of how to draw the eye. It's best in general to do your construction work before you get into the details, and there are lots of ways of doing faces and proportions, but in general it's good to start with a circle. If we want to add a bit of shape, we can add a little bit of a thin, small jaw, and we have a low eye line with very large eyes, often very low in detail in the features, in things such as the nose and mouth, but very detailed in the eyes, lots of big circles and bubbles and all that stuff. There are lots of different ways of doing the body. You can go with a straight sort of proportion. You can go with things that branch out from a small core out into tapered out legs. Or we can begin with a large core and then taper things in. Now you can do that. I didn't do that here, but you can kind of have the arms bigger at the top and bring them in smaller and have those little mitten hands. So they're kind of interchangeable between them. And it's just really what you're going for at the time. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. That's a bit of an example. Again, this is using Mischief, so you've got the infinite canvas. I can kind of go zoom in and out as far as I want anywhere in the image. So if you want to check out that program, make sure to go to madewithmischief.com. I'll put a link in the description. Otherwise, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, that is my tutorial on chibi characters. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've kind of had a bit of fun drawing a few chibi characters, so let me know if you have any requests for future tutorials. That's it for now, and until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you later.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy my videos. You can download the reference files from this tutorial by clicking the link in the description. And remember to share any art, animation, or game you make on Newgrounds.com. Until next time, see you later.